The topic today is going to be on develop mode and looking at workflow. And specifically, we're going to look at batching processes and using presets to improve that workflow. Um, it's, still a phenomenally underutilized tool, and one of the strongest functions of ACDSee is batch developments. And we're going to go into more depth in regards to this, but we're going to be looking at essentially a tool for developing your images that is very non-destructive. And provides you a really good means of editing bulk photos. So this is especially useful if you're a commercial photographer, and even more useful if you're just somebody who takes a lot of holiday photos, family photos, or even if you're, in this case, I guess, a wedding photographer or a fashion photographer or something like that. The purpose of this is to sort of like showcase how to expedite astrophotography. I've never worked with space photos, but there's no reason why you couldn't create processes that would be beneficial to photos of outer space. There's certainly tools that like can highlight and illuminate certain like stars and stuff like that in ACDC using different exposure tools. So certainly. But yeah, the purpose of this is to sort of generate sort of a set of circumstances and to set those circumstances and then produce them as a bulk action so that you've edited your images. There's certain functions that at this juncture are not like masking and things like that, which are not universally applied very well to other images because of the change of shape in your images, or in terms of its geometry, or images that have what would be the term for it? Like I guess different subject matter. So we'll look at sort of taking those elements, saving them, but also omitting them for the purpose of a bulk action. Okay, let's here. I'm gonna make this a bit bigger, and we'll move some of these around here. Yeah, that's way better. Okay, and then we can get started. Question before we do from Howard. Howard asked, when I batch white balance, I'll take the first image and use the autocorrect setting. Okay. When I run the batch, all the files are marked as custom correction and might not have the proper correction. Would I have expected them to be auto-corrected? Thoughts on this? Yeah, so auto-correction, I believe, is going to be relative to the image, which is probably, I would have to test it, and I perhaps will maybe at the end of this workshop, but the auto correction is going to be relative to every image. So it's not going to be like a set value, which is why you're receiving a custom value for every image when you go to make a batch change of that white balance. If you're looking for similar circumstances or similar visual circumstances, I would not use the autocorrect tool. I would use something like levels or the curves tool to adjust. Um, why would it be set as custom? My guess would be because, yeah, instead of like, why wouldn't it say autocorrect? That's a really good question. It's probably the reason for that is because the developers felt that autocorrect was making considerations based on relative information for the image, and so that it's, I guess it's viewed as like a custom or like adjustment, but the wording on that is a bit misleading. I would say that, well, I'm not customized to an image. I don't know. It's you wouldn't. I would have just put autocorrect in the listing if it was my decision making process. But I certainly think you could ask the developers why they chose that verbiage. I think if it's confusing, it's something that they would probably want to change too. But yeah, autocorrect would apply a relative adjustment, and that's why you would be maybe seeing the word custom be used there. That's actually a really good question. Have you reached out, Howard, to the developers over the Connect page just to ask? I'm just curious. Um, it's a really good question. I'm going to assume that you probably haven't yet. Thank you, Marv. Okay. Why don't we get started? Just as a point, Howard, just to answer this question more, I don't know. That is an odd verbiage. I would ask that question towards the developer. If you go to our Connect page, let's see here. There we go. If I go to the Connect page, there is a section right here that's feature request and developer Q&A, and I think that really falls under developer Q&A. I know I'm not a developer. No. Oh, I see. Okay. So they have some content. They have some things that they're working through. Um, Fair enough. Yeah, no, I'm not a developer. I'm an educator for ACDC, and I do videos in regards to like content. And then my background is as a graphic designer, so I do. I've done workshops and tutorials, teaching people how to use like comprehensive editing tools. Um, Maybe when they've gotten through one or two of those tickets, then put it in the connect page and see if they get any answer. I think it's a good question, but I think my sort of gut response to that would be because the tool is making relative changes, hence customizable. Okay, so today, so first and foremost, developing in ACDC um, is non-destructive. So I'm going to be working with this file today. This was a photo I took while I was on a vacation in Mexico, just on my phone actually, and this is a photo that I want to take lighting conditions in regards to, and I want to replicate those lighting conditions on all of my other images that I took on my vacation. So we'll talk about tweaking those things and saving it as a batch process. And this is what I would describe as a workflow improvement. Batching has been around in ACDC for a really long time, and there's an analog and edit mode as well, which is sort of beside the point for this workshop, but it's called actions. And basically, both the developer tool and the editor tool in ACDC have a way to create, save a series of adjustments that you make to an image, and then scale that up and basically be able to apply that scale for other images. There are certain limitations to this tool, and we're going to talk about those. But this is a massive workflow improvement, and it allows you to like edit multiple things at once. Also, all of these adjustments are still editable and they're non-destructive, which means that we can go and we can tweak values if we don't actually like some of these changes if they're applied universally. Just as a frame of reference, when we're in develop mode, the filters are on the left. You're probably familiar with these. This is how you make adjustments to your image. There's all these series of develop presets that have been made basically by ACDC already. So we've got this series of adjustments that we can make to an image that is a preset, which runs a series of changes to an image. And then we can apply those at any point if we go to say play one of these development presets. So just as an example, if I was to take this image, which I'm going to make different edits to, I'm going to make customized edits to, personal ones, but I can take one of these default presets that ACDC has created and I can say, let's just apply this fade adjustment or the fade and grain adjustment. As you can see, that creates a series of adjustments on my image. And I can see those adjustments on the left. And this is really what we're sort of talking about today in more depth. But this fade and grain black and white adjustment, or say mono or mono pro, noir, tonal, any of these adjustments will have corresponding changes that occur in the filters. So if I look over to the general filter, we can talk about each one. So the first filter is that we can see that the general application has been switched to black and white. So we're editing in black and white for this image. And it looks like actually nothing was changed other than a modal switch. And then the tone curves, we can see that there was a curve applied to this image, what I would call a pretty standard S curve. But one of the things you can see is that the blacks in this case were pulled way into the shadows. So there is no true blacks in this image. It moves those blacks into what I would refer to as the shadow spectrum. So kind of like a gray spectrum here. So that's the tone curves. Inversely, it looks like we've moved all of the true whites into what we would call as highlights. So this would be more of a light gray spectrum here. So the tone curves is an S curve with the basically the bottoms and the tops sort of moved further into what we would call as desaturated colors. And then there's an effect to this image, and the effect is a photo effect of mono, which I don't know the technicality of the mono adjustment, but this is a photo effect that's been applied to this image. and it looks like it's been applied with in full. So there's no opacity applied to this particular adjustment, but that's the effect. So it's been switched to black and white. It's been made into a like a pretty a standard S curve with the bottoms and tops removed, and then there's also a photo effect. So the point being is that when I click on one of these default presets, my image changes. And it changes in such a way that if I was to navigate away back to manage mode, and I navigate back into this file in the future, right, you can see that these development adjustments are still active, and most importantly, they're still editable. So, for example, if I was to go into this tone curve and I actually said, oh, I actually want blacks in my image, I could bottom out this particular line here. It kind of ruins my S curve, but if I was to navigate away back to manage mode, you can see that this particular image and that particular development, in this case the tone curves, has been adjusted in full. So at any point, when we apply a development preset, when we apply any degree of adjustment, right, it's always a non-destructive adjustment in develop mode. It is always editable. So this is a really powerful tool, and the what we're going to be doing is we're going to be applying a series of adjustments to my image that I think make the image better, and we're going to be saving our own preset. And that's important because when we go to take photographs, especially if we're taking photographs on vacation or we're doing commercial photography or something like that, there's going to be, especially if it's on the same day, and especially if it's within a series of hours that have similar lighting conditions, these adjustments are going to be really relative to what the photo we've taken. So that means we can take these adjustments and we can say, hey, all of these photos were taken on the same day within a series of several hours. So we have similar lighting conditions, and then we can apply our preset to those images. Pretty powerful. Just as a point of reference, too, if we were to go into this developer preset and we actually change one of these presets, so that was a black and white one. If we go to, I guess, this vintage adjustment, if we click on one of these, you can see that the effect has been applied, and there's a series of these different vintage adjustments that I guess are looked to replicate sort of a camera lens, a camera film type. So, and then when we click on these, you can see that the adjustments themselves change. So, if we're going into general here, you can see that the treatment applies to color. Raised exposure, raised highlights. The fill light looks like it's been raised. The contrast has been reduced. Saturation has been reduced. And then if we go to light EQ, it looks like the shadows have been bumped up as well as the midtones. The color wheel itself looks like we're applying a gold hue to the midtones. And let's see what else is there. There's a tone curve, a very, very slight tone curve to remove the bottom blacks. So those are pulled into the shadows. And then the effects are they've applied a transfer effect. There's a LUT that's been applied to this image. So there's actually been quite a series of developments that have gone into this particular development preset. And then it has a post-crop vignette, looks like negative. So in that case, what it means is that there's been a very, very marginal vignette that's been applied to the edge of this image. So whenever we apply a development here, we're seeing these adjustments in real time. We're seeing these adjustments in such a way that we can actually track and look at what those adjustments have been applied. And I haven't mentioned this, but when we click on one of these guys, right, and we click on any of these development presets, we know that there has been a adjustment applied because there is this active blue icon next to one of the filters. That active blue icon just tells me very simply that, hey, there's been adjustments in this field. And typically when adjustments have been made, there's also going to be a reset icon that appears. And that reset icon removes or sets all these values to their principal or original values when we go to click on them. So if I was to, say, click on all of these, for example, my image would be restored, and it would be made back to its original values, which is like that. So my point being overall is that develop presets already exist. You can play around with these right now. We're just going to showcase how to create one. But if we look at these and we apply these, you can see that adjustments have been applied to the image. they are typically shown. They're shown with that little deactivate or that little blue icon that showcases that an adjustment change has been made. And then at any point, we can navigate away. And when we do that, when we navigate away, we are presented with an image, a thumbnail that's been adjusted, predicated on any adjustment that we've made. And when we navigate back to that image in develop mode, we can re-edit those that file at any point and adjust those values. You may notice. I wonder if there's any images. You may notice that when you go into an image, that there's a little icon that'll appear here. This little pink icon that you see here with the half circle. This indicates that is a visual indicator that any adjustment has been made to this image. So when you see this icon appear, that means that this image contains developments. So you might already know that and be able to see that based on the thumbnail itself. But if you were doubting in any way that maybe you've navigated away from this image and it's been several months since you've looked at it again, you can tell very quickly that an image has been developed and contains adjustments by this little icon here. If at any point I don't like the developments that have been produced on my image and I don't want to manually go into every image and click on the reset icon to basically reset the values, I can at any point select a series of images. I can right click on those series of images and I can go to the process section and restore to original. And what this will do is it'll remove any active developments on my image. Note that when I restore to original, I will not be given the ability to get these back at any point. This is final, and then I would have to make new developments on my image to restore them back to their original values. So if I was to just click this one, which clearly has developments on it, and I restore to original, when I do that, the icon will disappear. That little pink icon disappears, and now there's no developments associated with this image. So what I've shown you so far is basically I've shown you what the architecture of a development looks like, in that the filter menu changes based on development presets. I've showed you where those default presets live, so what they look like, how to apply them. One of the things I want to showcase as well before I leave this menu is I want to take a series of images like this series right here. But before I show you how to make your own preset and then apply them, and maybe be aware of the parts of the development presets that we don't want to apply. We want to maybe make certain decisions that are more universal, like lighting conditions, and apply those as a preset while maintaining geometry differences and maybe maintaining like certain masking adjustments that are going to be unique to an image. So we'll showcase that. But before I do that, let's take this row of images. And what I've shown you so far is processing or adding a preset to an image within the image itself. But what I haven't shown you is what the ultimate purpose of this workshop and really what the workflow improvement is to apply a development to an image or a series of images in a group as a bulk action. So if I take these, 3, 6, 8 images in total, and I go navigate to our batch adjustments here, and if I navigate down to what says what batch develop is, if I click on this icon, we'll be presented a menu that allows us to choose a development that either already exists, aka one of those default batch developments, or the one that we're going to be making today. A note that batch, for those of you who haven't seen this, I'm imagining a fair amount of you probably have. Batch is an incredibly powerful tool that allows you to make, in this case, bulk adjustments to selected files. So some of the options here are batch edit, and batch develop, as discussed. It allows you to increase the resolution using AI super resolution to a series of images. We can rename files, which you'll most assuredly use lots in using ACDSee. I use rename files probably every time I use ACDSee to rename a series of images. There's also a resize function, and then I can convert, or rather, I can basically save a copy of an image in a new file format. For example, if all of your images were like raw images or TIFF files, and you wanted to save them down as a writable file and a file that is much smaller in terms of its file size, I might convert those into a JPEG or a PNG. Now, this doesn't erase or remove the original image. Rather, it just creates a copy of it that then will be saved in the location that you deem. I can also rotate, and then I have these other two, which is I can adjust the timestamps in an image. I can convert ICC files, or I can just quickly adjust the exposure as a batch adjustment. The one today, though, is batch develop. And so if I click on that, I'm given this huge list of developments that I can apply, right? And some of these are going to be, in this case, like if you remember, some of them are going to relate to a certain process. So if we remember Mono was a black and white application that that had a series of curve adjustments that dealt with the I guess the blacks and the whites in our image. So if I was to select this Mono development, I can click develop, and it will develop all of these images in a series for me. So as you can see, when it goes through, these images are being converted to black and white with the corresponding adjustments that we saw when we were looking at our image earlier. So it's going to go through and it's going to make a batch development application to each of these images individually, basically based on our selection. So it looks like that one is now complete. And this whole row, these 8 images, are developed as such. So notably, a couple things happen to these images. One of the things you'll notice right away is that icon appears, right? That development icon. So this doesn't just pertain to developments that are made in the file themselves. This also pertains to batch developments. So if we were to make a batch development, those adjustments are applied to those images. And so when we open them in development, they will be active in the filter menu. So if I was to click on this building facade, you can see that there's been effects that have been applied to this image here. And it looks like just mono for this one. And as such, this image has seen some adjustments here, right? If we were to navigate away to a different image here, go back to develop mode, you can see that the effect again has been applied. It's a mono filter effect. And so all of these images have seen that corresponding batch development. Marv asked, what happens if the images are already black and white? Well, if the images are already black and white, the effect might not look like it will be applied, depending on what the actual effect is. However, if you were to navigate into develop mode, regardless of whether or not the image is black and white already, you will see this effect applied. So the photo effect of mono will be applied to your image, and you will see that this field is basically can be reset if need be. Now, how mono as a filter, which it looks like it's a photo effect filter here, how mono applies to a black and white image, I'm uncertain of what that looks like, but it's going to have an effect, some degree of effect on your image. So there's either two things that's going to happen. It's going to look like basically it's going to look like a darker image, which is probably going to be the case because it's going to be overlaid over top of the effect of your black and white image, or it's going to appear to have made no change at all, but there will still be an active effect here listed. So, basically consider this, Marv. If you had a black and white image and the development was just a levels adjustment, right? The levels adjustment moved the midtones basically move the midtones further to the whites, which means that now there's more shadows in your image. If that was the application, right, then in your black and white image, you would see an application of those, basically those shadows would be more prevalent in your image. So again, the particular adjustments of mono to black and white, it would probably vary depending on the image and the degree, or not the degree, but rather the intensity of the black and white in your image. But what you will see, most assuredly, is you're going to see that effect was still applied, regardless of whether or not it has any visual consequence to your image. So those adjustments are applied to this series of images. And like I said, if at any point I wanted to remove that application, now what I could do is I could obviously go into develop mode, and I could go and I can click on the reset icon, which resets all the field, and I can navigate back to manage mode. Well, visually it is basically reset to its original values. You'll notice that the development icon is still present just because there's still been developments made to this image. So if I wanted to reset these images and remove that development icon, I would click to the process, right click, go to process, and restore to original. And this will restore these images back to their original values. Okay, so what we should understand right now, right, is that batch applications can adjust these values, or batch developments rather, can adjust these values in our image. The values are going to be outlined basically by those little deactivate icons. Those little blue icons will tell us that something has been changed to that field. We showcase that developments in these cases are a fast and effective way to apply some degree of change. Some of those changes already exist as default developments. Now we just need to showcase how to save and what is relevant to us when we're going through the process of developing an image. So let's take those tools that we know that expedite and make editing much faster, especially when we're looking at bulk image editing. And let's actually like look at one image in particular now and start the actual development changes of this image. So I like this image. This was just a street in Mexico. My partner and I went to Mexico and had a lot of fun and took lots of photos of architecture in Mexico City just because it's really pretty and there's lots of this old Spanish style architecture that's really unique. Beautiful city to be in. Very green city. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image and I'm going to make some adjustments to it. It's not a perfect image. I mean, it's a bit blown out in the center and the colors aren't great. So let's just make a series of adjustments to it. When we do that, when we make those adjustments, this section here is going to be basically it's going to be populated. So these adjustments will apply some sort of effect. So let's just go through one by one and we'll make some subtle adjustments to this image. I'm just going to go into general. And when I'm in general, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to slightly increase the contrast. So we'll just increase that value to about 20 and I'll just increase the clarity slightly. So already we can see just a slight adjustment to the shadows in this image. And as you can see, that's been applied. The clarity will increase, basically make the image appear slightly sharper. When I do that, that icon is now active. So we can see that, and we can also have the ability to reset this group at any point. On its own, I can click on this little icon right here, and if this was the only series of actions or only preset that I wanted to save, I could click on this Save Preset window as it pertains to just these general adjustments. So I can save this at any point by just clicking on this little cog wheel and going down to Save Preset. But I don't want to just make a general adjustment to the exposure of my image. I want to make other adjustments. So what I will do is I'll continue to edit. So I can go and I can just slightly increase the, I can warm my image. In light EQ, I can slightly drop my midtones and my shadows, but I'll probably also do this effect in the tone curves. So I can go into tone curves and much like the mono here, oops, I'll delete that point. I'm going to, oops, I'm having a hard time grabbing that one point right there. I'm just going to raise the shadows into, sorry, raise the blacks into the shadows. And I'm going to take, I'm really struggling to grab these points. There we go. I'm going to take the highlights and move it down. And then I'm just going to create a very subtle S curve in my image here. And so if we look again, we can see that this might be even too aggressive. So let's see what we can do. I'll maybe leave the curve and I'll just reset these values right here. Oh no, the midtones definitely should be down. And that looks good, but it's a bit hot in the center here. So we'll see what we can do to address that. Let's lower the contrast. I'll leave the curves and I'll just reduce the contrast slightly in this effect because I think the two together is too egregious. So I have a tone curve. I have a slightly warmer image. I have slightly reduced the midtones in my image. I'll maybe also reduce the shadows in my image as well. And then I don't know, maybe I'd add something like a vignette to my image. So basically what I have here is I have a series of generalized adjustments to my image, and I could include detail in that too. I could sharpen my image if I wanted to. But I have a series of adjustments to the Tune tab here that correspond to a general adjustment, a white balance, a light EQ, a tone curves, and a post-crop vignette, which makes my image look a bit different from my original here. Furthermore, what we could do is we could go on and we could make some geometry adjustments to my image, and we can make a mask. We can add a mask to my image as well. Typically, what I like to do in my images is I like to add a little brush mask where I do the equivalent of dodging and burning, where I darken the already elements, the images of the part of my image, pardon me, they're already a bit dark. So I'd take something like masking and I would very slightly reduce the exposure. Here, let's see here. There we go. And I would just paint on a little bit of a shadow in my image here. Let's see here. Yeah, probably like that. Over my image, just slightly. Definitely not here. I might increase the feathering here. And I would just paint on a little bit of a shadow in some of the areas that are already a bit darker to sort of reiterate that and make the image have a bit more of a dimension to it. So I would do something like that in terms of a change. And then what you can see is you can see that the mask is active here. So there's some of that exposure adjustment that applies to the right-hand side of my image here, some that applies to the center, and some that applies to the left side of my image. Now, something to consider is that when I'm going to save a preset, this is something that I maybe don't want to include in the preset, that while this is an adjustment that I like to perform on an image, I don't necessarily want to save this preset because some of my images are going to be of different subject matters, and therefore this particular adjustment of exposure to the right hand side of my image, slightly to the center and to the left of my image, is not something I'd like to see on other images because it might not make sense for them based on what the subject matter is. So something I need to consider, much like if I was to make a geometry adjustment to my image, say I was going to constrain, I want to adjust the, let's see here, the left side of my image here. I want to crop. Here, let's see if I can crop. Oh, here, I need to zoom out slightly. Let's reset this. I do need to zoom out slightly from what I'm seeing here. Oops, there we go. Okay, so I don't want to rotate or straighten. I just want to crop this image. Yeah, so if I was to make a crop out of this left-hand side, for example, like maybe, this is the actual subject matter. My two people walking their dogs is on the thirds line, which if it was further out here, it's not as true than, maybe if I was to crop it to that section there. So if I was to make this change, right? So I want to consider too that maybe this particular crop is not going to apply to my other images based on, again, their own unique geometry. So there's certain things I want to keep when I go to make a preset, and there's certain things I don't want to keep. And we'll talk about this more when we go to actually save the preset ourselves. The other thing I want to do perhaps is I want to apply a lens correction. And this lens correction applies to my particular camera model. So in this case, it was just taken on a phone, right? And so the camera is then the phone, and then the particular lens, etc., applies to whatever that model is. So I can apply a lens profile adjustment, which reduces what looks like it increases rather the barreling of the image. So the phone takes an image that is slightly pinched, and by applying this lens profile, it increases the barreling of the image, which sets this or creates more of a corrected or default value. So if we were to make that lens correction, I like that lens correction, and I know that I've taken other photos in this series with this same camera, in this case, my phone. So all this to say, I've made a series of adjustments to my image, and I want to review those image adjustments now. So let's go back to the Tune tab and talk about what we want to maybe keep for this image. Let's keep and what we want to maybe hide for creating a preset. So overall, we have a masking adjustment. That masking is relative to this image, so that's not something we're going to be saving in our preset. Then we have general change, a white balance change, a light EQ change, a tone curve, and a post crop vignette, all of which we do want to keep and we want to save to our preset. We then we didn't make any detail changes. We just left the detail the same. And then we made a geometry adjustment that we want to keep and apply to our preset, and a geometry adjustment that we don't want to keep. So we have a lens correction, which we want to apply to our preset, and we have a crop adjustment that might not be relevant for the other images that we've taken on this holiday. So we want to omit that from the preset. So we're omitting a mask and we're omitting the crop and we're keeping the lens correction and we're keeping the filter adjustments. Let's actually apply this now. So if I navigate to the overall preset adjuster, if I go to click on this little cog up at the top here, and I click Save Presets, this will save a preset that allows us to choose the options that we have, or choose what we've saved, and then we can work from there. So this is a bit different than clicking on a particular cogwheel that will just save an application that is similar to whatever the individual filter is. So if I was to click on this particular cogwheel, I'm just saving a preset that pertains to Light EQ. Whereas if I click on this cogwheel and click Save Preset, I'm saving a preset that pertains to all of the adjustments that I've made thus far. So if I click on that, first and foremost, I'm given the ability to add a preset name. So I'll call it Mexico 2024, which is, I think, when this was taken. And so that would be my preset name. And now I'm given the ability to choose off of this list here what is going to be added. So there's a couple things. If you have made no adjustment that is relative to a particular image, if you've only made general adjustments to your images, then you can go ahead and just click Select All. Regardless of whether or not you've changed something in a particular field or not changed something. For example, I have made no color EQ adjustment here. If I was to click Select All, even if there isn't any adjustment present here, it's just going to copy the adjustments that are present. So at any point, if I've just made a bunch of general adjustments to my image and there's nothing selective or relative or no masking that's being made, then you can just go ahead and select all. It'll just apply everything, and if there's nothing in a field, it'll just omit it. But unfortunately, I don't have that luxury because I have adjustments that pertain to this particular image that I want to omit. Notably, I want to omit crop, right? So what I'm not going to be selecting is crop here. What I will be selecting is lens correction. We know that I wanted lens correction because I know that the rest of my images in the series are taken with this particular camera. And then I have some general adjustments that I want to remember. So the general ones, we can actually just click every single one of these. We know that we want to keep all of those. We want to apply all those. The other thing I want to make sure is that I click on white balance to make sure that these white balance adjustments are applied. And if you can see here, we can kind of just like go through and match what we've done here. So white balance was one. The other one was light EQ, which we captured in general lighting here. And then tone curves, we want to get tone curves, which I believe is under, let's see here. Tone wheels, that's not tone curves though. Do I have curves in here? I'm not seeing curves. Actually, why don't I see curves? White balance, color EQ, color wheel, tone wheels, advanced black and white, split tone, color space, photo effect. That's odd. I don't know why that wouldn't be listed there. Oh, tuning masks. Oh, I'm stupid. That's what this is. It is a tuning mask, no, for tone curves. We'll give it a go and see what happens. No, that's a selective adjustment. That's for okay. So sorry, I think I am omitting it here. What I want is a tone wheel probably. Clarity, vibrance, adjust, fill. That's odd. I'm not seeing it here. I feel like I'm missing something. Skin tone, noise reduction, sharpening. That's in detail. Style, no. Effects, no. Color. Advanced black and white. Color wheel. Bottom left, they say. Tone curves. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Thank you for calling that out. CB, Bill, and Chris were pointing it out. So tone wheels is not actually applied to this image. Tone wheels is right here. Tone curves is at the bottom, and it is applied to standard. And that just leaves post crop vignette, which would be not under geometry, but rather style. Okay. Point being is that we now have the general applications. We have the white balance. We have the light EQ right here. We have the tone curves, as pointed out by everyone in chat. And then we have the post crop vignette. The thing that I am omitting here is I made a particular tune mask to I sort of drew on a reduced exposure on the right, left, and in the shadows in my image. And I would not want to click on this. I would want to omit this in the same way I'm omitting the crop. And the reason why is because I don't want to take this extremely selective adjustment and then apply it to a series of other images in my in this particular album that I have. I don't want to do that because it might not be relevant to the content of those images. So I would do that, and then I would just click OK. And then when I do that, that is saved. I don't know why that was applied here. Let me navigate away for a moment here. That was very odd. Just going to restore to original for a moment. And we'll take this series and we'll batch develop it. And I believe I titled it Mexico 2024. And if I click on develop here, it's going to go through and it's going to apply this series of adjustments to all of my images in this series. And then we can go and we can verify that these adjustments have been applied. So if we click on this image, for example, and navigate to develop, you can see that these adjustments have been made. So I'm just have a different photo here. So the general application is, in this case, a increased contrast, increased clarity. And then I have a white balance that slightly warms this image. I have a light EQ of reduced shadows and midtones. And then I have this like kind of S curve with the bottomed and tops sort of moved into the shadows and highlights respectively. I have a post crop vignette. And then I have a lens correction applied. In this case, the lens profile. It looks like it has applied a crop, but there's no change to this image. So it looks like it did. Oh, you know what? That might have been a pre-existing development here. But either way, the lens correction is correct, and the tune is all applied correctly as well in this image. And so I can go into, I can go into any of these images in my series here. There we go. And I can click on them and see that these adjustments have been made that correspond to this image. Even the image that I didn't save has the corresponding adjustments applied to it. So I can see that these developments have been applied in this series here, thus, in this case, saving me time. And now if I wanted to go in individually, right, based on the lighting conditions of my image, I can go in and I can make certain geometry adjustments. So like I can crop this image in the corresponding places. I can go in and I can mask or make a tune mask that corresponds to the content of my image. Even it could be something as simple as going in and being like, okay, well, I want the sky in this particular image to be adjusted, or I want to increase the vibrancy in regards to, this particular sky or something like that. So we can make those generalized adjustments, save them in a preset, and then we can go through and we can actually adjust accordingly each image relative to its relative content. Chris said, I use presets a lot, but saving presets is frustrating. It doesn't know what you've adjusted. If when you save the preset, the settings you've used are highlighted, it would be far better. Yeah, this is actually something that I've mentioned to the developers last year, and I have mentioned it before. And I think it would be best if, any adjustment that you've made is just clicked or already highlighted, like you're describing, Chris. What I would recommend is I've also requested that feature be added to develop mode. What I would suggest is to actually make that comment in the feature. If you go to the Connect portal and go to feature requests, just ask for it. Because the more people that ask for a feature or tool like that, even in this case, it's just a quality of life improvement. The actual fact is that ACDSee is not a very large company, and it can make changes to something if people request it. So I've personally requested that. I'd like to see this as well. It actually comes with a lot more weight when people, like actual users like yourself, Chris, ask for a tool like that. So I would just quickly, request it in that field. They see those. They monitor that thread like pretty pretty often, so they'll see that change and they'll maybe consider it for a future edition of ACDC. But I definitely agree. I think having a development that's already that's remembered to some degree, and that way you can just turn it off if you want to do that. Pardon me. But yeah, great suggestion, and again, one that I've also suggested myself. I think it would be a good quality of life improvement for the software and allow us to just sort of expedite that process, because that means that you don't need to go through and like highlight every single one or to verify which ones are actually included. You can just omit the ones that are that you want to. So, okay. So my point being, overall, is we've gone through and we've created this series of images that we've then adjusted. And we've used the batch tool to do that. We basically navigated to a series, batch develop, and then just selected the development preset that we saved, which was this Mexico preset that I had created. And because some of these photos are taken on the same day, it applies those lighting conditions and they look good for our images because those lighting conditions are universal. It applies a lens correction to them based on the camera that was taken, but they're also, they have different similar exposure levels and therefore this adjustment will look good when it's applied. So that, and then I can take these images in individually and adjust any corresponding lighting conditions that are maybe unique to the image based on the subject matter, the orientation of the actual image itself, change geometry adjustments, that sort of thing. So when using develop mode, presets give you this ability to expedite your development based on a series of these filter adjustments, and it also gives you the ability to save this function so that if it even applies to other images in the future based on a breakdown of workflow. So maybe perhaps you're a fashion photographer and one of your basic workflows is to just apply a series of tone curves that that need to be adjusted in each of your images. Well, you can save your particular tone curve as just a one-off and then apply that to all of your images and sort of break down your workflow into steps and save them in their corresponding I guess, save them as corresponding presets. So you can kind of order these presets as a series of operations that are based on lighting conditions that you want to see these changes applied to. So think of it as something that you can break down into steps and also to like really maximize efficiency and just run these series of adjustments on your images, omitting the adjustments that you know that aren't necessarily needed for a series or run or batch of images. Really powerful tool. Okay, so that kind of covers what I wanted to talk about in terms of breaking down workflow. Basically, when we're using presets, what we want to have a basic understanding of what they do and how they work. But most importantly, what we want to do is we want to know like what to omit and what to include in the process, and what to sort of to take out, and to understand why we're taking it out. We don't really want to apply a mask to an image that doesn't have the same content, nor do we want to necessarily include geometry adjustments that are going to be applied to an image, in such a way that is going to change the orientation of your new image. The other thing we don't want to do is maybe make like repair or clone stamps on an image and have those clone stamps not make sense on the next image. So there's some considerations to be had when we actually save the preset. But so much of these general application will be really, really useful from one image to the next. Does anyone else have any other questions? That sort of covers what I wanted to talk about today. Develop presets and sort of looking at workflow and breaking that workflow down into steps and then saving sort of presets that enable us to expedite that workflow. But yeah, that covers it for today. And I'm just happy to hang around and answer any questions that people have. Oh, I see. LJ asked, when I return to manage mode from develop, I get the message to save as. You don't get this. What do I need to set? Oh, I might actually get that, and I might have clicked cancel here. Let me see. I'm just going to go into an image here and go to develop. I'm just going to let's just develop it using the development I just made. So I'll click Mexico 2024. It's been applied. And I think what you're experiencing is if I click on manage, go directly to manage, I don't see that window pop up. But I believe if I click cancel, no, yeah, nothing happens. So are you getting a message that says prompts you to save when you click on manage here? Is that what your experience, LJ? Mine in this case doesn't. But if I was to click done, perhaps let's see what the interaction is here. I'm just going to go through. Done applies the changes. Goes back to manage mode. I've definitely seen what you're describing, and I'm trying to replicate when it occurs. So if I go save, obviously save gives me the ability to save as a copy or something like that, or save as. So you're clicking on manage mode and having that be prompting you to save. That actually might be, I don't know, that might also be an option. Let me see in the help window. Let's or go to tools and see if there's any options for manage mode. Oh, sorry, for develop mode here. Okay. So it's possible that there's auto save all development mode adjustments is not selected here. Because it looks like I've clicked this, and this is probably what prompts me to save when I leave. So if I unclick this, click OK, and just go into another image here, develop it, I think it might prompt me to, oops, what's going on? I think it might prompt me to save when I leave here. So let's just confirm that that's the case. Yeah. Okay. So you're getting this pop up. Is that correct, LJ? If you're getting this pop up, yeah, it's that feature. So I'm going to discard these edits. I'm going to go to tools. I'm going to go to options. And in the series of options, LJ, you have general, manage, file list, and then you have edit mode. I'm going to collapse all those. I'm going to click on develop mode, which is at the bottom of file list. And then I want to make sure that autosave all develop mode adjustments is selected. And this is going to make that window go away when you go to manage mode. When I click OK on that, all adjustments that I've applied will then be autosaved when I go to click manage mode, and therefore that pop-up won't appear. Does that make sense? This is a good question. I don't remember setting that, but that's probably something that I would have done. Howard asks, okay, awesome that answers your question. Howard asks, what happens when you have some settings already set? There are no corresponding settings in the preset. Is the setting reset or are the changes kept? Yeah. So great question. Let's look at that. So let's develop this right away. Or actually, no, let's just go to the image next to it. I'll just go to this image. This is a bad image anyway. So this image, I believe, if I go back to manage mode, yeah, it says there's developments, but I don't actually think there is active developments. Whereas this one, there for sure is. Okay. So this image, as Howard is pointing out, already has developments active. So if I was to then apply another development, so I can go in and develop this image manually, and I can add or change any of these developments on my own, and that will add a particular development. So if I wanted to do a color EQ and I wanted the blue to be even more blue, I've then added that development. But that's not what Howard's asking. What Howard's asking is if I batch and I develop this, right? If I make a development adjustment to this image, let's say I remove, do I want to remove noise? Let me do one that's more, let me just apply this mono one again. Let's see if this is additive or if it replaces the adjustments. So if I develop it, my understanding is that it will replace the adjustments, but let's go back in and see what the developments window says. Looks like it actually doesn't. It's additive because it looks like if I look at this image here, the tone curves is the same, but the effect is now applied of mono. So if we're going to apply a development here, right? It looks like as a batch action, it's additive. It's just treated as additive. Now, if I go to the develop presets within the tool itself, and I was to click on a black and white and go to noir, for example. Yeah, so this, if I click on noir within the development presets, if I've already made some developments to this image, that photo effect has been changed. So it's moved from mono to noir and it's been adjusted, but all of these other presets have been maintained. So that color EQ adjustment where I maxed the blue was maintained. So I guess, Howard, my point being is when we go to add a preset to our image that already has presets, it looks like it's additive, not it doesn't replace those things. If you want to replace it, I would just go and I would reduce or take the go to process and restore the image to original, and then apply whatever preset you want to apply to the image if you want to remove the other ones. Does that help at all? Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't actually applied it to see if there was any changes, but it looks like it maintains the existing development presets. Does anyone else have any other questions today? Um, oh, as always, just something I always like to mention. So these workshops get uploaded to our YouTube channel. I'll probably have it uploaded in a couple days. Um, the other thing to keep in mind too is if you're looking for a particular workshop or would like to see content on a particular thing, you can reach out to me over Connect the portal and just make a suggestion because I love to hear people's suggestions. And if I can do a workshop on that content, I will. So if you have a workshop suggestion, please send me a message there and I will cover that. Um, Ray asked, with cameras like Dwarf Lab 3, is ACDC adding any relevant tools, e.g. stacking, etc.? Stacking meaning photo stacking? Is that what you're asking? What type of stacking are we referring to? You're welcome, Marv. Thank you so much for participating. I'm unfamiliar with Dwarf Lab 3 myself, but ACDC has a process where it takes new camera models um, and it updates those lens profiles probably like several times a year. So it adds new models based on third-party data in regards to sort of deconstructing like what the actual camera's application is. So here's how we perceive the camera to operate, and then it updates those that information on in ACDC itself. So adding those new camera models, but stacking, pulling out faint celestial objects. It'd be more of a developer question than for me. I'm not sure what like models there are being added to ACDC and whether or not that in this case the stacking would be applied. To be honest with you, I think it's not something I'm familiar with, so I can't comment on it. But I would recommend just reaching out to the developers and asking that question because they'd be willing to answer it. Sorry that I don't have a more conclusive answer for you in regards to that, Ray. There's a lot of like, again, because I come from a background of being a graphic designer, I'm not necessarily um I guess I'm not somebody who's like actively in the field taking photos. And as a result of that, there's certain like new functions that are in particular I guess photo editing softwares that I'm still like unfamiliar with, or as they come to ACDC, I'll familiarize myself with them. But that's maybe one that I'm unfamiliar with. Thank you, Rick. You're so welcome. Alec, you're so welcome as well. Okay, awesome. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute my mic because I've talked for quite a while. But if anyone has any other questions, I'm going to stick around and chat for another 3 to 5 minutes here, and I'll answer them as needed. But CB has asked another question, so you're welcome, LJ. Thank you as well. Thank you, Bill. Uh, CB asked, is there a library of presets to augment what's already there? Not to augment, no. When we go to that batch function, CB, when I go to batch develop, these are treated as adjustments that we can apply to our image, but they're treated as they're not showcasing like what's been adjusted and what remains unadjusted. So the answer to the question is when you go to apply, there's going to be certain things that might certain fields, depending on whether or not they intersect, might be updated based on the most recent batch development you've applied. So, for example, if you had one image that had a certain exposure, and then you go to apply another batch development that applies a different exposure, when you go to apply that, it's probably going to update that exposure, right? But it's not going to tell you what the adjustment is. This is probably a reason why when in ACDSee, because this is a customized process and you want to make sure that basically understand what goes into these adjustments when you go to make a batch development. So when you go to apply them, you understand what's changing. But no, there's not like a library of what gets added or removed when you go to make a development. That's a good question. In actions, there is something similar to that in edit mode. I'll actually show you really quickly.